You want to create a battle map? Then this video is for you because we are going to create exactly this.
Enemy forces have breached the perimeter. Sector Bravo is under heavy assault. We've lost contact with forward positions.
And in this video, we're going to use Artlist for the background music, the sound effects, the voiceover, and also their amazing LUTs library, where you can select from a bunch of LUTs to stylize your video in a very cinematic and professional way. So for this tutorial, I also prepared some assets for you, which you can download with the link in the description below, so you can follow along with the exact same video files as me. Alright, so without further ado, let's get started. The first thing that we need is our map. So you can either find one on stock websites where you can download a stock map in a certain style. You can make your own using paid software or websites. But in this case, I went for Google Earth because you can actually pick real locations. So I'm going to explore Google Earth here. That's earth.google.com. And right here we have the entire world map. So what I will do is find a location where I want to pinpoint my action. So I live in Belgium right here. So the first thing that I want to do is make this map clean. So I will check here in layers. I want it to be clean. We can close this. So we have the entire map. We can zoom in a little bit, just like this. So just take a print screen of your screen and then you can crop that in later. So select it like this, save it somewhere, wherever you want. Then you're going to zoom in a little bit towards the location. I want my location to be close to Dunkirk, so just zoom in a little bit, take another screen capture. Zoom in a little bit more. And if you still want like a heads up, you can always go for exploration, so you know where you're looking at, and then go back to clean. So it's gonna be somewhere here. I want it to be centered. Take a print screen, and then we zoom in more, another print screen, and zoom in a little bit more. And we keep doing that until we are fully zoomed. All right, that seems about enough. So I saved all my files here of the screen captures, and then we can open up Adobe After Effects. Before we continue with the video, I quickly want to talk about today's video sponsor, Artlist. They've been a returning sponsor on the channel, and I'm always excited to share them with you because I use their high-quality music and sound effects library all the time for my videos. But Artlist is so much more than just a music library. They have been pushing the boundaries, introducing new features that revolutionize the way creators like us work. For example, their new speech-to-speech feature, which is coming very soon, is literally going to be insane. You will be able to record your own voice however you want it, and then translate it into a professional voiceover that says it exactly how you want. I am personally really looking forward to this one. And then you have their library extension plugin, which allows you to integrate Artlist within your editing software. This will make your creative process seamless, and you don't have to jump into your browser to search any of their features. Plus, their cutting-edge generative AI features are changing the game by combining Artlist's creative library with the latest advances in generative AI. You'll have all the tools you need to tell your story like never before. So if you are ready to elevate your creative projects, check out Artlist today. Big thanks to them for sponsoring today's video. Now, let's get back to it. In Adobe After Effects, we're going to import our files right here. So I will just select all of them and drag them into Adobe After Effects and bring them into a folder. Call it map. And then we're going to create a new sequence here. I'm just going to make it full HD. So 1920 by 1080. This is going to be the main composition. And I'm going to make it around 30 seconds, so for 900 frames at 30 FPS. If you want to change this to seconds, you can also do that simply by clicking OK and then holding Ctrl and clicking here so it changes to seconds. And if you now go back to your composition settings, you will see that it's at 30 seconds. So we're going to select all of our map files here and bring them into this composition. And now we can see that this is the last one. It's more zoomed out, more zoomed out, more zoomed out. until we have the entire map into view. Okay, so that's great. We have a nice chronological order, and then we can right click new and create a new null object. This object is going to be our control. And so what I want to do now is select all of these files and parent them to the control. So whenever I scale or position or rotate this, it's going to affect all of these together. So what I need to do now is deselect all of them until we have the most zoomed out image, and then bring in the more zoomed in version. We're going to press T on the keyboard and change the opacity here to 50. And then we're going to press S on the keyboard to scale it down. We're going to scale it until we can fit it to the map below it. Pretty close, something like this. Doesn't have to be exact. As you can see, also there is a little bit of distortion to the entire map, so it doesn't matter if it's not exact. But the idea here is that we're constantly going to zoom in on our map and not having any quality loss when you're actually fully zoomed in. Otherwise, if you're just going to scale this up, you're never going to get the same result as in there. So this one is at 44 scale, that's great, and I think it's close enough. So now we can unlock or make the other layer visible just above that. Press T on the keyboard and set it also to 50. And make sure that the layer below it is back to 100 so you can clearly see it again. The opacity, we just bring it lower so we can see the layer below it and make sure that it's fitting properly. And one more thing that I want to do is select all of my layers, set it to none so it's not binded to the control anymore, and then take the control and place it exactly to that point. So we are going to zoom in to straight to that point, and then select the entire map again and reparent it to the control. And so now if we're going to scale it, we should be able to just scale it just straight until there. And the more I zoom, the higher the quality of my map becomes. We can see that I messed up a little bit here, so that's fine. We can just rearrange this, press T on the keyboard, set it to 50 opacity, and scale it properly. So now what you can do is also like feather out these edges if you don't like to see this, but honestly it's like a satellite picture and I like the imperfections in there, so I'm probably going to leave it as it is. So now that everything is done, we can press Ctrl A, close everything down, and then just focus on the control here. We can press P on the keyboard, hold Shift and press S on the keyboard so we have both position and scale. And I'm also going to right click here, transform and reset it. Well, I have this map here and it's not straight, so I can just bring the position a little bit down and also scale it up just a little bit so it's covered in the entire composition. So now I'm just going to create keyframes for the position and scale. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit on my timeline, not too much. And like at 1 second, we're going to create keyframes by clicking on the stopwatch right here. Move 10 frames forward and we're going to zoom in just like that. I'm also going to create a keyframe for the position here. In around 2 seconds, we're going to create keyframes again, so it's actually holding that keyframe for that little bit. And then we zoom in even more. And we also reposition it just a little bit. And sometimes it might be hard to see it, so I'm just going to make certain layers invisible until we see this one. And so now we can clearly see where the zoom should be. And then on this one, I maybe want to take a few seconds where it's like passing over like this. It's like a floating effect. And there we go. So now all we have to do is make all these layers visible again and do a little preview. And so right here, before we get into action for this zoom, what I want to do is move these over just a little bit. And then right here, create new keyframes for the position and scale. And 10 frames, I'm going to actually move the position up a little bit. to see like the attackers. And I'm going to also copy this keyframe and paste it a little bit further and make sure that we just offset these keyframes. And so like this, you're going to zoom in, look over, go back, and then zoom back in. And if you want, for each position, you can always add in a little bit of a movement. That way it looks like a satellite that is flying over. But of course, it's better to keep it rather subtle. So I'm just going to copy this back into place and just a little bit. But it gives a little bit of movement. And of course, you can also play with the timing if you think certain shots should take a little bit longer. So this is looking great already. The only thing that we need to change is select all of these keyframes, right click, keyframe assistance and easy ease. That's going to give it a smooth curve of speeding up and slowing down. And it's going to feel a lot more organic, more realistic, or yeah, as you can see here, it slowly zooms in and gets faster to the midpoint and then slows down again in the end. And it just feels better in my opinion. So then another thing we can do is select motion blur for all of these layers here. If you don't see this, you can just simply toggle the switches right here, enable motion blur. And that way, if you're going to zoom in, you're getting this nice motion blur. Perfect. So of course, once you have this nice animation, we also want to make it feel like there is a satellite or UAV doing all of this stuff. Well, most likely a satellite because there is a full zoom, but it could switch, for example, at the end towards a UAV, for example. That's completely up to you. But for that, you need a few overlays. And so I animated something in Adobe After Effects, which is not going to be for this tutorial. But if you want to find out more, you can also follow the link in the description below where you learn a bunch about After Effects to do so. Otherwise, this tutorial is going to be a lot more complex, but I will provide you with that file so you can just simply download it and use it straight away. The way you learn video editing is about to change forever. All through 2024, I have been pouring my heart into something truly epic. I call it my masterpiece. It's designed especially for creators just like you. And I can honestly say that I have never worked so hard on any project ever before. While I can't just share all of the details just yet, I promise they are coming soon. In the meantime, if you want to stay updated and unlock early access, click the link in the description below to find out more. Let's create something truly epic and amazing together. So I'm going to import this UAV HUD overlay and we can just bring it in here and then toggle the switches and set it to screen. I'm also going to right click, transform and fit to comp with. Now we have this nice overlay here that gets animated in just like that. I'm also going to change the resolution to half so it goes a little bit faster and that looks really cool. I'm also going to right click new and create a solid, and this is going to be my grid, and I'm going to make this a white color. Click OK and OK. And now I'm going to search for the effects and presets here in this tab, choose grid, and I'm going to apply the grid to this solid layer. And then change the size form to width slider. And that way we can create a nice grid like so. Press T on the keyboard for that grid and change the opacity to something like 25. So it's not very obvious, but it's there. And that way we create a nice digital look. Another thing that I want to do is add in some noise. So I'm going to apply a noise here, right here. Apply that, change it to something like 25. Pretty drastic, but the noise really makes it look digital and like a actual satellite is doing this, and it gives a little bit of life to your flat images. You can also create a new adjustment layer and call this lens, and then search for the optics compensation effect and apply that to your adjustment layer. Increase this number, and you can either reverse it so it looks kind of like this, but a little bit less. And that way we have like not a perfect straight line, but it looks a little bit more distorted, and that gives it a nice vibe. So now comes the time that we need to create all of our assets in our map. So a little bit closer to the end here, we need the attackers, we need the defenders, and we need the location pinpoint of our Bravo location. So I'm going to create a new composition and I'm going to call this Bravo. Set it to 500 by 500, so it's a perfect square, and click OK. In here, I'm going to just double click on the rectangle tool that's going to make a perfect rectangle. I'm going to choose the color and set it to gray 50%, so it's perfect 50% gray. Click OK. Go for the stroke effect, set it to white, click OK, and then increase the stroke to your liking. Then make sure everything is deselected, go to your text tool and click in the center, press B. Change the color to white, and then go through your fonts until you like something, just as simple as that. And there we go. Scale it up, and then for the align here, if you don't see that again, window align, we can choose our selection tool and click on this one and this one to center out the B. So this is your Bravo icon. We can go back to the main, go back to project and import that Bravo composition right here. We're going to scale this down and place it somewhere that you like. Press T on the keyboard, change the opacity to 50%, and then also make sure that you're going to link this to the control, so that way when your map moves, the Bravo is going to stick to your map. Now we need our enemies, so I'm going to create a new composition, and this is again going to be my, well, I'm going to call this enemy, keep the square that we just created and click OK. This I'm going to make 2 seconds long, so delete the 30 and set it to 0.2, which means 2 seconds, OK. And I'm going to choose the polygon tool. If you drag a polygon, you can hold space to reposition it more in the center. You can see that, well, it can look different for you. All you have to do is press the arrow up or down and yeah, bring it down until you have just a triangle. Make it a little bit bigger, just like so. And then go to the fill, click on fill, set none. And then for the stroke, make it a stick as you'd like. And then for the color, we're going for a red color. Click OK. Go to your selection tool and center out your triangle. We're also going to do this for the defenders. So we're going to click on our enemy composition here in the project manager, Control D to duplicate it, then hit the return key, call this defenders, double click on this, and all you have to do is click here, change it to blue. I'm also going to copy this color code, Control C, and then click OK. I'm going to create another composition, and this is going to be, for example, my artillery. And click OK. This time, instead of a triangle, I'm going to use the rectangle and make a rectangle like this. And I'm going to also center this out perfectly. And luckily it remembered our color code, so we don't have to change a thing here. Then next, I'm also going to create a new composition, and this is going to be my attack animation. And we're going to click OK. And in the attack, I'm going to create an ellipse. And double click on the ellipse so we have a perfect circle. Go to the stroke and set it to none. Then go to the fill and set it to red. Click OK. Now I'm going to duplicate this animation here. Press D, Control D, that is. And I'm going to toggle the switches until I see the track matte option. And here I'm going to pick the top layer. So it's actually looking at the top layer to see the bottom layer. And all we have to do is click here to invert this. So now we don't see anything. And on the top layer, we need to apply an effect and preset called it Fast Box Blur. Apply that to the top layer here. And if we're going to increase this, you're going to see that now we have this kind of faded out sphere. And we also need to parent this to the bottom layer so it actually keeps the same scale. Then press S on the keyboard, click on the scale for, well, the stopwatch for scale, set it to 0, and at 1 second, we want to set it to 100. And like this, we get like a nice fade out. And 20 frames before 1 second, we're going to press T on the keyboard, click on the stopwatch for that, and at 1 second, we're going to set it to 0%. So that way we have this kind of explosion just like this. We can press U on the keyboard, and for this 2 last keyframes, we can right-click, keyframe assistance, easy ease, and then go into the graph editor and bring these out a little bit more. That way it explodes up and slowly comes to an end. Perfect. Same for the artillery. Right here, we can press T on the keyboard, click on the stopwatch, and we'll actually leave it to be seen for 20 frames. And then at the end, set it to 0. And then we can copy these keyframes, go to frame 20 and go to the defenders, go to frame 20, paste it. And then for the enemy, frame 20, paste it. That way we also apply these keyframes to the opacity for all of these animations. And that's something that I want to do, is some kind of loop where you see them on the map, but they disappear. It's like a scanner looking for the enemy and etc. So now for the position where we are actually looking at the sea here, or well, let's start right here. We can go to the project and go for the attackers and bring them in to our map. Now we need to right click here on our layer and go for time, enable time remapping, hold Alt and click on the stopwatch for the time remapping. All we have to do is click on this little arrow here and go for property, loop out. Deselect everything and then just increase the length of the entire duration of your composition. And now we're going to have a perfect loop of that composition. So this is the attack, for example. Now we have the defenders. We're also going to bring that in here. Right click, time, enable time remapping, Alt, click on the stopwatch, property, loop out, and increase it to the entire duration. And then we have the enemy. We do the same thing. And there we go. Loop out in the entire duration. Great. So we can deselect these for now and focus on the enemy. So for the enemy, I'm going to just make it quite a bit smaller and find a nice location where I can both see the sea here. That's great. And find a position where you actually see the triangle, because of course it fades out. And make it quite a bit smaller. Bring it over to the sea. And of course here we need to make it quite a bit smaller, so maybe we wait until we zoom in a little bit more. And then we can also scale it up. And there we go. Press the W key to enable your rotation, and we're going to rotate it with the arrow pointing towards the beach. And we have them right here. So now what we want to do is go to the beginning, or actually go back here and make sure that the parent is also to the control. That way when it's zooming, it sticks to our map. That's great. And we're going to press P on the keyboard, click on the stopwatch, leave it here, and then maybe slowly move it up and bring this keyframe all the way till the beginning. So right here, it's closer. And then right here, we have this zoom to our beach. So we're going to bring this keyframe over here, so they're kind of closing in. And then we're going to bring them closer and closer until they're at the beach, and maybe just offset this keyframe a little bit. And now we can just simply duplicate this composition, Control D, and go to the keyframe right here, press P on the keyboard for that one. And now we need to highlight the position. You will see that all of your keyframes are selected. And now if we're going to play with just these settings right here, just by dragging them, you can reposition it while the animation still retains. So I'm going to hold Control to have a soft motion here and just give it a little bit of an offset, and keep doing that for all the enemies you want. Press P on the keyboard, highlight it, and then just reposition it wherever you want. And it's really important that all of these keyframes are selected, otherwise you're just going to create new keyframes and retain the original ones, and you will see when you animate it that it's not working. But I think this looks great. So we're going to keep the enemies as it is here. And now we're going to Control A, close everything down. These are the enemies. Okay. What you can also do is toggle the switches until you see this icon here. and click that for all of these layers, and then you can click here so you don't see them in your composition. You can do the same thing for your map, and that way we just can focus on whatever we want to focus on. Now we have the defenders, for example. So in the same position where we zoom in a little bit more, we can make these smaller, and maybe we have some defenders here. And also I'm going to parent it to the control, duplicate this. And of course, we also need to make them a little bit smaller. And it's getting harder here because we have like a 0.24. So I'm just going to select all of them and put them to 0.1, 1.5. Okay. And that seems about right. So that's great. Now we can also press Control D and take one of these and bring them, like, for example, over here, rotate them with the W key, rotate it like this. And maybe these are troops that are coming in. So maybe press P, click on the stopwatch, move this all the way here. And then right here, they're closing in, and that's going to be towards the end. And then we can just duplicate it. I'm also actually going to create a keyframe here in the middle. That way I can see it on the map because I'm already zooming in and zooming out. It's just handy to rearrange everything. So I'm going to Control D, press P, select the position, and you always need a keyframe on the position you want to make sure to offset everything. And then we can just offset it like so. And then we have that. So now again, we can select all of the defenders to make them invisible. Now we have the attack. Well, actually, we already made the attack right here, but just offset it towards this timing. So right here, we see the attack for the first time. And also enable it, of course. And there we go. And then scale it down. And we have like attack here, duplicate, attack here, duplicate, maybe an attack here, and then duplicate one more. We're going to have like a big attack here, so we're just going to scale this up so we have some variation. And so like this, we notice on the map there is an attack going on. Select all of the attackers and also bind them to the control. Now we have one more thing to do. We can also make these invisible. We don't need to see them. And that's going to be our artillery. So bring that in. And for the artillery, okay, we also need to animate this. So right click, time, enable time remapping, alt click here, and then property loop out. Make it the entire duration. So right here, we can focus on our map. Artillery should be a lot smaller. And there we go. We have the position that we need to animate here. And we're just going to disable the lens for now because it gives me a little bit of bug on the view of this artillery. So we want to make sure that we see it just like that, where the square is around the artillery. We can set the resolution back to full so we see it a little bit more clear. And in my opinion, it should be even smaller like this. And it's just like maybe tanks or something, like a reference for the tank. So that's great. Now we can create a path here. So we're going to choose the pen tool, go for fill, disable this, and give it just a color that we can see. Red, doesn't matter. And now we can create something like a path, something like this. Of course, doesn't need to be this big. And this is the path I wanted to take. So I'm going to call this shape layer path. And if we open up the path, contents, shape, path, open that up, click on the path, Control C, go to the artillery position and press Control V. We can now bring this all the way to the beginning and Alt, click on the last keyframe. And if you hold Alt and click and drag like this, you can slow down the animation. So something like this is fine. And that way we see that the artillery is taking the entire path. One more thing that we need to do is press V on the keyboard or choose your selection tool. Right click here, and in the transform, we want to auto orient our layer, and we orient along path. Click OK. So now it's also going to follow with the rotations of the path. That's great. We can also disable the path here. Click on the path and artillery and also bind them to our control. And so now we can see that we have like a flock of tanks here on the map represented. That's great. So we can duplicate the artillery and press U on the keyboard. And for the position, we can just select all of these and offset these. So we have another flock, duplicate, press U on the keyboard, select all of these keyframes and offset these, and duplicate it. There we go. That's great. We can close everything down. We can also make sure that we see everything back in our layer and check if everything is fixed to the control here. It seems like it is. And then the path, we're also going to bring it here. And then for the lens, let's see if that messes things up. Nope. Okay, that looks great. So let's see if we preview the entire duration here. Quickly, I'm going to set it to half so it goes faster. So one more thing that we can do is now create a location tag. So I'm going to choose my rectangle tool, go to stroke, disable this and choose a white color. Make a rectangle here. And I'm also going to choose my anchor point, move the anchor point to this part here, then click on the rectangle. Now if we press S on the keyboard, we can simply, and also make sure that you disable the constraint. We can animate it like this. We don't need to do it just yet, but that's great. Choose your text tool and rename this Dunkirk. Select your text, turn it into black, maybe make it way smaller and give it some width here. So we get something like that. Perfect. And we also want to make sure that the paragraph is left aligned and bring Dunkirk right here, like so. And then we can duplicate these two layers and bring them below. And this time maybe make the text smaller. Sector Bravo. Select this layer, make it longer but thinner. Move it up and move this text up as well. I'm doing this with the arrows here to get into the right position. So now I'm going to toggle the switches and choose the track matte option for the layer below. That's going to automatically disable the layer below. I don't want that, so I re-enable this. Same for this text. There we go, and re-enable. And then for these two layers, press S on the keyboard to reveal the scale. Click on the stopwatch to lock or create keyframes. And then a little bit before that, we're going to set this to 0 and 0. Only the first value, and that way we get this. The only thing that we need to do is offset, well, actually, the other one, Sector Bravo. So now we have a nice representation of the mission or the location, and that's looking all right. So now we have our entire map. The only thing that we now need to do is add in some really nice Call of Duty style background music, some sound effects of the zooms and the glitches that we are going to put in there, and also maybe a nice LUT. For the displacement, I'm also going to add in some glitches here using the adjustment layer, displacement, and apply a turbulence displace and change the turbulent to horizontal displace. And the size, you can make it way smaller. So you get something like this. the intensity also higher. And if you alt-click on the stopwatch for the evolution, you can write a simple expression such as time times 1000, which is going to give you a nice animation over time. And all you have to do is click on the amount, set it to 0, go a little bit forward, set it to maybe 150, and go forward again and set it to 0. And that way you create some nice glitches in there. And of course, randomly spread them over the entire duration of your map. And that way you create these kind of glitches and it just adds in a little bit more detail. Alright, so now to complete our map, we need to have some music in the background that represents some Call of Duty type of background music. We need some sound effects for the glitches and the zooms that we put into this. We also maybe want to add a LUT to give this a nice cinematic look, because right now it looks kind of plain. And we also want a voiceover just to add a little bit of storytelling behind this map and explain what is going on. So all I have to do in Adobe After Effects is export my video. I'm going to export it in high quality, which is using QuickTime, and the format option is going to be Apple ProRes 422. That gives me the best quality to export into a different software. And go over to Window, Extensions, and Artlist Library. We can dock this right over here. And so right here we have the music, so let's search Warfare. Once you found something that you like, you can just hit download to bin, and I'm going for the WAV, which is the best quality. There we go. Now we have it here in our project manager. Bring it in here. And so you can notice that it's a little bit too long. So what you can also do is right click here and go to Remix, enable Remix. And we're going to set the duration to 15 seconds. So there we go, 15, and hit enter. Now it's going to shorten that clip here. And go to the beginning and maybe just trim this a little bit closer to this point. Great, now we can go to the Artlist library and we can go over to sound effects and we can go and search for zoom. We can download this one, and this one, and this one. Should be enough. And then we can also go over to the voiceover. And right here you can find a nice amount of voiceovers. These are AI generated, but they sound amazing, literally like a real person is saying these. So I want to find a male gender in the video category of, let's say, trailers and also characters. Maybe, well, that should be enough. Well, let's find something. I like this one, Shadow. Oh, this is really cool. So I'm going to click on this voiceover. And so here I want to write something down. So I prepared a text. I'm just going to head over here, change the, well, it's going to be English. You can choose your language here. I'm going for, okay, American in this case, and then paste my text. And now we can just hit generate. It's going to use your credits. So now it's generating right here. And let's see. Sector Bravo is under heavy assault. We've lost contact with forward positions. This sounds great. So if you want different emotions, you can go over here. Now it's set to neutral. You can set it to angry or surprised. So let's try angry and just hit it one more time to generate. Enemy forces have reached the perimeter. This is great. Let's download this to our bin and use this voiceover below our music track. And so now we have one more thing to do, and that's to add a little bit of a grade here. So for this, I'm going over to the LUTs here on Artlist and find a nice LUT for my map. We can try a few different ones. Maybe download this one and also maybe this one. Once you have downloaded them to your preferred location, we can now click on our video file and go over to the Creative tab and then browse here to that specific location and then click one, open it up and see what that does to your video clip. So the volcano is pretty cool. This looks more like a warfare type of stuff. So now we can increase a little bit of the sharpness. We can decrease a little bit of the vibrance, go over to the basic correction, add in contrast, a lot more contrast, lower the highlights a little bit, maybe also the shadows and even more of the saturation here. And now we get some kind of warfare type of look. All right, so there we have our final result. If you want your map to be a little bit slower, you can always go over to speed and duration, set it to 80 and also change it to optical flow. And that way it's going to be long enough for both your music and your voiceover.
Enemy forces have breached the perimeter. Sector Bravo is under heavy assault. We've lost contact with forward positions. Reinforcements are en route, but we're running out of time.
All right, and that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give this video a like. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to stay notified when I upload new videos. Apart from that, I'll see you in the next one. Until then, create epic videos.